Analytics are great, but don't let them be the foundation on which you play fantasy football. They're best utilized as a peripheral tool only.
Tyler Boyd's dip in production last year better correlates with Andy Dalton being off the field than it does with A.J. Green being off the field, despite public perception.
You can't watch just highlight film because highlight film only shows the good things. Watch the player's actual game tape because you see the good and the bad.
In 7 games in 2018, where all 3 starting Rams receivers were healthy, Brandon Cooks led the trio in targets, receptions, receiving yards, and total PPR points by a considerable margin.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome into another episode of the RotoBros 2020 NFL Draft Scouting Brief Series. I know you guys are loving them. Just got done with Tua Tagovailoa the other day, so hope you guys enjoyed that episode as well. If you have not checked it out, go check it out. If you haven't listened to any of the other ones, what are you doing? What are you doing? I'm giving you all this free, awesome information. Go check all those out. We've done Jonathan Taylor, DeAndre Swift, J.K. Dobbins. We have done Cam Akers, Jerry Jeudy, Joe Burrow, Tua Tagovailoa. We've CeeDee Lamb. We're doing them all. We're going down the line. Next up on the list is Clyde Edwards-Helaire, running back from LSU, a guy that a lot of people are really starting to fall in love with. I don't think there's many people, even that really followed college football, that really knew about Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Like he got his run in 2018 as well. Okay, so it's not like he burst on the scene, but he really made a name for himself with how great LSU was and how much pub, Jamar Chase and Thad Moss and Justin Jefferson and Joe Burrow brought to the team. Clyde Edwards-Helaire was along for the ride, right? He wasn't the star of the show, but he was certainly an important part of it. And so we're going to get into him tonight as well. So this episode, again, on Clyde Edwards-Helaire, running back for LSU. He has declared he will be in the draft. Guys, let me just tell you right off the bat. I'm just going to, full disclosure, I love this kid. I love this kid. So really, really excited to do this one. Probably more excited to do this one than I have been since the Joe Burrow episode. You guys know about my my man crush on Joe Burrow. Anyway, Clyde Edwards-Helaire is phenomenal. So let's dive right into it. Okay, we'll start with the measurables as we always do. 5'8", 209 pounds. He's 20 years old. He'll be 21 in April. So by the time the draft gets here, he'll be 21 years old. So still very young. I know a lot of people like that. Again, 5'8", 209. So a lot of people are going to look at 5'8", and they're going to say, okay, this guy's really small. He's a scat back. Don't always look at that. Just because a guy is shorter than, 5'10", doesn't mean he's a scat back. Okay. He's not 5'8", 182. Okay. He's not walking around like, one of these small scat satellite backs that have no muscle, no pounds to him. He's got it. Okay. And as a matter of fact, we all remember all our favorite, all time, bowling ball back, Maurice Jones-Drew. The comp here is way too similar to ignore. Okay. Way too similar. Maurice Jones-Drew, we'll go ahead and get it out there before we start. This is the comp for Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Okay. Both size and playing style. Jones-Drew was, I believe, 5'8", he was 5'8", 212. So he was a little bit heavier than Edwards-Helaire and just a little bit shorter, believe it or not. But these two really run very similar. They play very similar. Their skill set is very similar. So if there's any comparison to Clyde Edwards-Helaire, it is Maurice Jones-Drew. So there's a little bit of Michael Dyer in there. I don't know if you guys remember Michael Dyer, the former Auburn running back who was one of the heroes of that national championship game against Oregon back in was it 2011. But also he went to Louisville, and that's kind of where he faded out a little bit. But we never really heard from him again. But Michael Dyer, there's a little bit of him in there as well. Now, Dyer, if you watch Dyer on film, He is a little bit slower than Clyde, and he's a little bit taller. He looks a little more lean than Clyde was. So I'm not really. He's not a hard comp at all. It's Jones-Drew is the hard comparison for Clyde Edwards-Helaire. But I do, the way they run, the way they juke, the way they move and cut, kind of reminds me of Michael Dyer. Again, the former Auburn and Louisville running back. But like I said, Dyer was a little bit taller, and he just simply wasn't as good of a football player as CEH is, and didn't really finish his runs nearly as well as Clyde. So when I turn on the tape for Clyde Edwards-Helaire, the very first thing I noticed about Clyde was he has very quick feet, okay? He's a very shifty runner, and that's really helpful, coupled with his low center of gravity, okay? 5'8", 208, like he's got a really good low center of gravity, which I love in running backs, because it allows them generally to have better balance when they run, when they cut, when they juke, when they spin, better contact balance upon getting hit, and they're able to just to move a little bit better, and a lot of times they're a little bit harder to tackle. So I love that about Clyde. Like I said, it makes him a little bit harder of a player to bring down as well. Let's start, I guess, let's go right into one of the things that people like most about Clyde, okay? His pass catching ability. He is one of, he might just be the best pass catching running back in this entire draft. Now, he's more than just a pass catcher. We're going to get into that. But this trait alone is what is going to get him drafted. He's not going to, as long as he tests, good at the combine and does what he's supposed to do at the combine, which we all, in his pro days, of course, which we all expect him to do. He's not going to get out of day 2. He will not be a day 3. He'll be a day 2 pick. There's stone cold lock to be a day 2 pick if all goes as planned for him. But this trait here alone is going to be the reason he's a day 2 pick. He's got a lot of other good traits we're going to get into in a minute, but being a reliable pass catcher with soft hands, he's very polished and experienced receiving back. He's been doing it the whole time. Obviously, he's been at LSU. During the Auburn game, if you go back and you watch the Auburn tape, he was constantly split out wide, constantly running flat routes, okay? His routes out of the backfield are good. He's definitely a mismatch, a very, very big mismatch for bigger, slower linebackers, okay? Linebackers like, the Falcons' Deion Jones, those smaller, faster linebackers, or like a Jalen Smith for the Cowboys. Those are guys that, he's not a mismatch for, because, those linebackers are just as fast as him. But when you're getting into the bigger, slower linebackers, Edwards-Helaire will just, he'll run rings around him. So that's going to be where I think you're going to see teams, use him as well. He's really good in space as well. Especially with his size and his moving ability, I think teams are going to make it, whatever team gets him, I think they're going to make it a point to get him plugged into situations where he'll have plenty of space. He's not one of those guys like a Cam Akers that I think is strictly going to be a successful space player, or like a CJ Spiller was. You got to get him in space to really get the most out of him. Clyde doesn't need that space, but with his receiving ability, if you can get him in those situations, my goodness, you're going to get such a great return on your investment if you can do that. So when he declared, it was obviously a big thing. Down the stretch, LSU was obviously making a huge run. They were getting all this pub. They were ranked number 1 in the country. And so there was more of a spotlight on CEH here. And so he started kind of getting a little more, garnering a little more attention. So he really became the nation's most feared dual threat back in that offense. And not only did he run for 1,414 yards and 16 touchdowns, okay, but he really did damage in the passing game. I mean, he caught 55 passes for 453 yards and a touchdown. 43 of those catches came in the final 8 games. So he wasn't catching a lot of touchdown passes. Generally in the red zone, you've got CEH to run the ball. You've got Joe Burrow's mobility. You've got Thad Moss, okay, in red zone packages. You've got Justin Jefferson. You've got Jamar Chase out there at wide receiver, those two guys. So there's wasn't really a whole lot of reason to go to Clyde Edwards-Helaire near the goal line where he'd get most of his receiving touchdowns. So he only had one on the season. But again, 43 of those catches came in the final 8 games. So he was so much more involved down the stretch. And I think that's another reason why LSU's offense just seemingly went into another gear in the second half of the year. So he was a big part of that. But like I said, even without space, Clyde, he does a really good job of running between the tackles. He runs with a ton of power and quickness. I talked about the Maurice Jones-Drew comp earlier. Maurice really had you go back and look at MJD, even coming out of UCLA and even throughout his career, he had more of a thicker lower half than Clyde did. It won't surprise me if Clyde is not the do-it-all heavy workhorse that MJD was, right? MJD came into the league. He was splitting carries with Fred Taylor down there in Jacksonville. Fred Taylor was their franchise running back for years. And then, of course, as he got older, they saw he needed some help. So MJD came in, immediately learned from one of the best backs in the league at the time. And MJD obviously just took over, and the rest is history. He was one of the best running backs in the league. And from a fantasy perspective, easily a top 4 running back of his time. I mean, you had Adrian Peterson, you had Jamal Charles, you had Brian Westbrook, and really you had MJD. I mean, there were some other names in there, but those were 4 of the guys that were really some of the top 5 names in fantasy and really overall in the NFL at that point in time. So MJD really came in, learned a lot from Fred Taylor, and did a lot to really become that do-it-all heavy workhorse back. I think Clyde Edwards-Helaire can do that. I do. I think he can be that sort of runner. But I don't know if it's going to end up happening, especially in today's NFL, where it seems like the huge workhorse running back, is kind of, is not as popular as it once was. Obviously, you got guys that have heavy workloads like Leonard Fournette down there in Jacksonville now, and you have a Derrick Henry in Tennessee, really. So you got all these. You got there's still some workhorses out there that are really doing it all, but a lot of times there's a lot of bodies in the backfield. And I think what's probably going to happen is CEH is going to have some company in the backfield. Okay, I don't think he's going to have the backfield all to himself or be the clear cut, get 90% of the workload or anything like that. I think he could handle that. I think he's good enough to do that. I just don't think that's going to happen. I don't think that's a bad thing because a lot of running backs coming out aren't going to have that. But again, even without the space, he does a good job running between the tackles, runs with a lot of power and quickness. But as I mentioned, the comp to MJD, the only thing is that MJD had a thicker lower half. And I think that helped him become, be able to take on much heavier workloads down there in Jacksonville. He has no issues finishing his runs. This guy, he will keep his feet churning until his knees are on the ground. It is, I mean, you see it numerous times in his game tape, and it is very, very impressive how much he keeps his feet churning. So I think probably one of the best running backs in the league when it comes to that. So he definitely finishes his runs, and you are not going to get any sort of lack of effort or early give with Clyde Edwards-Helaire. He's going to give it all he has every second of every run that he is given. Look, he's able to accelerate pretty quickly, shows excellent vision. His vision, I'm telling you, it is very, very solid. He has really good balance as a runner. Some of the best balance that I've scouted so far from this running back class. I'm serious. Some of the best and we talked about, I'm talking about guys like Jonathan Taylor, DeAndre Swift, who have great balance. Clyde Edwards-Helaire is right up there with them. Maybe even better as far as balance is concerned. And again, I think it goes back to his low center of gravity that doesn't hurt in that department. But again, great vision. You see a lot of that. If you watch I believe it was the Vanderbilt tape that I watched. You go back and watch the Vanderbilt tape. Watch his vision. It is very, very solid. And I know a lot of people go, oh, it's Vandy. Well, you know what? They're in the SEC. So they're in the SEC. They may not be Georgia. They may not be Alabama or LSU or Auburn. But he did it against Auburn. One of the best, arguably the best defensive line in the nation. But he's got a ton of power and grit when he runs between the tackles, and that's an excellent thing to have. I go back to the Auburn game. He showed that numerous times. His power and his grit on his runs showed it numerous times against Auburn. There's a couple runs in the red zone actually. Where everything's more compact. The defense is more compact. You're running out of room. It's harder to run in the red zone, and he like doesn't even lose a step. He was 20 in that game. He was 26. He had 26 carries, 136 yards on the ground, and 1 touchdown against, again, arguably the best defensive line in the country. So this guy, it doesn't matter who he goes up against. He just seems to churn out production. So again, he's an all-around running back, does a lot of good things well. One of the things that I do want to get to, because I know you guys are probably wondering, this is one of my favorite things to talk about. You guys are probably wondering, how is he in blocking? How is he as a blocker? Because I always talk about that with running backs. Clyde Edwards-Helaire it's a mixed bag with his blocking. And I think it's a mixed bag in the same way that it is with DeAndre Swift, in that Swift, it's not that he and Swift are, and I mentioned this in DeAndre Swift's scouting brief, it's not that he and DeAndre Swift are bad at pass blocking. It's just that, number one, they obviously have some stuff to work on. It is a mixed bag after all. But I also think that you go back and you look at the tape on both these guys, they weren't in on a lot of pass blocking assignments. They weren't. And I'm watching that, and I'm watching the Auburn game. I remember watching it because the Auburn game was the first tape that I put on of Clyde. And I'm watching the Auburn game, and I'm sitting there, and I'm like, where's the pass? Where's the pass block? Where's the blitz pickup? They're not putting him in there? Every time he's in the backfield, he's either running the ball or he's running a flat route. He's running a route to catch the ball, which is fine, obviously. But I also want to see some pass blocking chops. You're going to have to protect the quarterback at the next level, because he's as good of a pass catcher he is. He's going to be on the field in a lot of 3rd and 4th down situations. So he is going to be asked plenty of times in the NFL to protect the quarterback. Okay, believe you me. Now he can obviously get better at it. He can he can train at it with his running backs coach. So that's not a big issue. But you've got to realize he's not Jonathan Taylor when it comes to pass blocking. Okay. He's not that elite pass block. It is more of an issue that he needs to be more involved. He needs more experience. He just didn't have a lot of experience. However, when he was in, you go to the Vandy tape, he did a really good job of blocking. Really good job blocking. Okay. I noticed that several times. But then when you turn on the Texas game, there's more of a, like I said earlier, a mixed bag. He had a couple good moments in pass protection, and then you saw him miss a couple, and it looked like maybe he got a little discombobulated while the play was being generated. And so those are things that running backs have to work on. Not every running back is going to come out and be a great pass blocker. They're not all going to be Ezekiel Elliott when it comes to blitz pickup. But he's decent at it, but he's got to get better. He needs more practice. That's going to come in time, I think. It's not what I would call a red flag as much as it is something to look out for, or to keep an eye on, I guess. So I wish he was more involved in that, because I really wanted to see a lot of that out of him, and mainly because Maurice Jones-Drew, we know how good of a pass blocker Maurice Jones-Drew was. We know how good he was. I believe it was, I don't know, I can't remember the year. But you remember what Maurice Jones-Drew, when he absolutely had a hellacious block. I'm looking at it right now. Actually. So It was Jacksonville versus San Diego back when Sean Merriman played for the Chargers. I'm literally watching the game. They're on the goal line. Okay. Jones-Drew's in the backfield, and Merriman is obviously, he was a great pass rusher in his time. So he's coming back and he's, rushing the passer. MJD comes up and levels him, literally levels Sean Merriman. We all know how great of a pass blocker Maurice Jones-Drew was as far as blitz pickup and pass pro. So that's really what I would like to see CEH become, because he's going to be more, the better he becomes at that, the more valuable he is going to be. He's going to be valuable as a runner and way valuable as a pass catcher. But teams are also going to have to be able to trust him in pass protection. So that's one of the things I'm really looking for here. And, it's not really his fault per se. Again, there are some things he's got to get better at when it comes to that, but that particular trait. But he also needs to be put in that situation to sort of get more reps and learn. He'll get that in the NFL, especially if he's playing with a really expensive quarterback. He'll get that. So, but anyway, those you watch the Auburn tape. The blocking really wasn't there. They didn't put him in a lot of situations really at all. The Vandy, they put him in several situations. He did very good. Texas, they put him in a lot of situations. He was hit or miss. So kind of like I said, a mixed bag there. He just didn't get a lot of work again in that department. So hopefully, like DeAndre Swift, hopefully that will come in time. But going back to the Vandy game and talking about his vision and his cutting ability, it is plainly evident. Like especially in that game, he's got a very nice spin move too. You'll see him use that a lot in his tape. He's got a very nice spin move. He did it in the Auburn tape. He did it against an Auburn defender and really shook them loose. It was really, really quite pretty, if I may say. But yeah, he's got a really nice spin move. The Texas game, I think, is what it was actually, not the Auburn game. But yeah, look, Clyde Edwards-Helaire can do it all. I think that this is a guy that, again, I think he's going to be a day 2 pick. I don't think he's not gonna be a round 1 pick. Obviously, I don't think he'll be an early 2nd round pick. But I do believe that he is going to be taken on day 2, and I think teams are going to look at his late season run and see, this is a guy that is really sort of a lightning bolt, just a guy that can really come in and juice up the offense, and that we can really trust to hold on to the football. He doesn't really have ball security issues. He had 2 fumbles on the entire year. And I don't think he had any in 2018. So it's not like he has a big history of fumbling the football. So, ball security is not an issue for him. He can pretty much be his coaching staff is going to have the full trust in him as long as he can continue to develop as a pass blocker and in blitz pickup. So that's the biggest thing for Clyde, I think. And really, it's not even a huge red flag. It's just something that I think he's going to have to get more work at and get more practice in. And I think that's fine. You can't help it if a college team didn't put you in those situations. So just got to get better at that. But look, all in all, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, I don't know where I'm going to have him ranked yet. Obviously, the only thing I know with my rankings is that Joe Burrow's the number 1 quarterback, Jerry Jeudy's the number 1 wide receiver, and Jonathan Taylor's the number 1 running back. That's all I've got so far. So I don't know where Clyde's going to fit in, with J.K. Dobbins and DeAndre Swift and some other guys as well, Cam Akers. But Clyde Edwards-Helaire is definitely going to be up there. I would venture that he's going to be in my top 5. I do like him a lot. And I do think that he is going to have he should have a pretty good NFL career. As far as, rookie dynasty drafts, where you should take him, I think Clyde Edwards-Helaire, depending on landing spot, obviously, because a lot of people are going to be attracted, to the situation as well. But if he goes, to, I'd say a good landing spot where he will get used, I think you're seeing at worst a very early, like a top 2 pick in the 2nd round at worst. But I think if he goes to a really good spot, he's going to get taken in the late 1st round in rookie drafts. But if he goes to a spot, I don't care really where he goes. I want shares of Clyde Edwards-Helaire. So keep that in mind. Even if he goes to a spot where he's not going to get a ton of work, right off the bat. I still think his talent is going to shine through, and he's going to end up getting plenty of work as the season goes along. So he's a guy that I would want to draft and target in my rookie draft. So, guys, again, I appreciate you listening. Hope you had fun listening. Hope you kind of learned a little bit about CEH, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, running back from LSU. If you have any other questions, you guys can hit me up on Twitter at Mind of McConnell. You can go to Facebook and find me at FSA Fantasy Sports Advice and Analysis. So go to Facebook, type in FSA Fantasy, and you can join the largest, most active fantasy sports community on the planet. Also, check out the RotoBros Patreon. Check it out, patreon.com/RotoBros, $5 a month. You get all these scouting briefs. You get the Dynasty podcast that Mark and I are getting ready to launch in the coming months. And that will only be exclusive for RotoBros patrons. So keep that in mind as well. Of course, you'll get the Mother podcast, during the season as well. You'll get Mark's DFS Best Ball podcast with the producer man. So keep that in mind as well, guys. So you get a lot of good stuff on that. So check that out. Definitely worth the money. And you get private exclusive access to the RotoBros Discord chat as well with 40 or 50 of our great RotoBros patrons. So you guys check that out as well. But anyway, the main thing is I hope you guys learned some stuff about Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I definitely want a lot of shares of him in rookie drafts. And I think he's going to be a really good running back in the NFL. So I'm really excited for him, and I really, really like this kid. So anyway, turn on the tape, check it out, listen to this while you're watching the tape, and see what you find. See if what I say sort of matches what you see. And feel free to discuss with me, Twitter, Facebook, however you can find me, guys. Hey, listen, we're going to continue doing this all off season again. I don't know if this is the first one, but that you're listening to. But we're going to do this for all the prospects, as many as we possibly can fit in between now and April. And we're going to do several each week. And I don't know who's going to be up next. I don't really have a set schedule. I just kind of go through it. We still got to do guys like Justin Jefferson, Zach Moss from Utah, Thad Moss from LSU. We got to do Justin Herbert. So maybe Justin Herbert will be next. So got a lot of prospects to get to. So you guys buckle in tight. We got a good off season and a great draft season that is already cranked up and really, really hot. So you guys stick with the RotoBros podcast. I've got you taken care of when it comes to the NFL draft and learning about these prospects. So guys, again, it has been fun. Had a good time here. I hope you guys learned a lot about CEH, Clyde Edwards-Helaire. And again, I think he's going to be a very good running back in the league. I want a lot of shares for him. So guys, enjoy the week. Hope you enjoyed the episode. Thanks for listening. And as always, keep balling, baby.